Well, it's 3:30, so it's probably time for us to start. My name is Dennis Swanson. I'm the dean here at the library, and Robert Canada, who's the president of our Friends of the Library. We're excited to have our first faculty showcase for the year, where we several times a year have faculty members who have published new books of interest to come and share with you a little bit about the book and share a little bit about what's going on. I want to thank you all for being here. It's kind of a rainy, cloudy sort of day. If I look a little funny, it's because one of my contacts fell out and I can't quite see. I can't see anyone I'm looking at right now. I have one of those, one's close up, so I can see really well, but looking far away, that one is on the ground somewhere. It'll get vacuumed up by housekeeping in the morning, and I'll go put a new one in later. But I want to welcome you. We have some of the books available for sale. We also want to encourage you to stay for a little reception afterwards, and we have some information that Robert will also share about our Friends of the Library program, things we have going on. We do apologize for some of the clutter around the library. We're still doing a little bit of remodeling. Even this morning, we got the window tinting behind us finished, and they got all cleaned up, so we're doing a little bit more work, and you'll see some more exciting things coming on here in the library as we progress through the rest of this semester and into the spring. Again, thank you for being here, and let me introduce Robert Canada, who will introduce our speakers.
Good afternoon. You can do better than that. Good afternoon. As Dennis said, my name is Robert Canada. I am currently the FOL President, Friends of the Library President for 2018-2019. I also serve as the Director for the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And on behalf of the Friends of the Library Board of Directors and our members, I want to welcome you to our faculty first academic year faculty showcase, author showcase. So we are pleased to have with us two of our faculty members, Dr. Robert Schneider and Dr. Jeffrey Warren. I will read Dr. Schneider's bio, and then after Dr. Schneider speaks, and then Dr. Warren comes out, I'll read his bio as well. Each speaker will have about 20 minutes, and then at the end, it'll be open to Q&A. All right? Cool. You also were given a raffle ticket. Who was not given a raffle ticket? Who did not get one? If you didn't, my young men will give you one, because at the end, we will raffle off a free copy of Dr. Warren and Dr. Schneider's book. And it's signed. So maybe worth something later on, right? All right. So anyway, Dr. Robert O. Schneider came to UCP in 1982 as an assistant professor and director for the Washington Legislative Internship Program. Then from 1989 to 2005, he served as the department chair for political science and public administration. And then Dr. Schneider completed his administrative career at UCP in 2008 while serving as the Associate Vice Chancellor of International Programs. Dr. Schneider taught a class at the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth, South Africa in 2005. Currently, Robert is a full professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Administration. During Dr. Schneider's tenure, he has served in numerous capacities: faculty senate, committees, he was a coordinator of UCP's flu pandemic planning and preparedness, just to name a few. Robert is recognized as an expert in emergency management and climate policy. He has authored numerous books and articles, as well as received several grants. As for his community service, Dr. Schneider serves as a resource person for the North Carolina State Division Emergency Management. Additionally, he serves as the board of directors for the Rural Justice Project in Robeson County, North Carolina. He holds professional memberships with the American Society for Public Administration, the Southern Political Science Association, and the North Carolina Political Science Association. So please, let's welcome Dr. Robert Schneider to the podium.
Oh, hello. I always love it when you have a small crowd and everybody goes to the back. It makes me feel at home, right? Okay, in order to explain to you what this new book is about, it's titled When Science and Politics Collide, the Public Interest at Risk. I have a couple of quotes that probably explain perfectly. You know, when you think of politics and you think of science, you got to realize one thing. You're talking about two different worlds, two different realities almost. Here's what a scientist says about science. We live in the scientific age, yet we assume that knowledge of science is the prerogative of only a small number of human beings, isolated and priest-like in their laboratories. This is not true. The materials of science are the materials of life itself. Science is part of the reality of living. It is the way, the how, and the why for everything in our experience. End quote. That's Rachel Carson, the great environmentalist. If you don't know who Rachel Carson is, look her up. You will be very impressed. Here's another point of view about science, one that's probably typical in our political arena today. Perhaps this is how many Americans, particularly partisan Americans, look at science. They have a three-step approach. Step one, feel or believe that a conclusion is true. If you feel it, if you believe it, that's where you start. Step two, determine if the data, A, supports what you feel or believe, or B, refutes what you feel or believe. Step three, if the data supports what you believe and feel, declare victory. If B, the data does not support what you believe or feel, declare a conspiracy. Then declare victory. That's sort of how we see politics playing out today when it comes to science, or fact for that matter. I'm sure you've heard it said that in the post-fact era. Well, I don't know about that, but I do know this. The relationship between science and politics is not optimal when it comes to our public policy. So many issues that we deal with depend on utilization of the best knowledge science can provide. What I discovered, and by the way, what got me going on this topic was my last book on climate change, Managing the Climate Crisis. In that book, I spent a particular chapter studying public opinion on this subject and was intrigued by one of the major findings. And that is, the opinions that people had about climate change had nothing to do with their scientific knowledge. It correlated most directly with their ideology, their partisan viewpoint. And that got me thinking, you know, that's kind of a sick dynamic. If science can't break through and be heard on its own terms, what is the relationship between science and public policy? So I began this effort right after that. And what I discovered in taking a look at the history of this relationship is there are basically four different dynamics which at one time or another influence it. From time to time, politics and science do cooperate. Rarely, but they do. There's the cooperative dynamic. Then we have what I call the conflict dynamic, the times when science and politics inevitably come into conflict. Then we have the resistance dynamic, and finally what I call the panic dynamic. Now very quickly, with respect to the cooperative dynamic, there have been times when government, politics, politicians, and science have collaborated. Think of World War II and the Manhattan Project, building of the atomic bomb. Think of the space race. We didn't land a man on the moon because scientists persuaded everybody that was a good thing to do. We did that because politicians thought it was a good thing to do. When there is collaboration, it's usually driven by the policymaker, the politician, who identifies a priority that needs to be pursued, usually a priority that is a response to a crisis, and where science can be useful, it is enlisted as a partner. There's a marriage of convenience. So think of, for example, when Sputnik was launched. And I write about this as one of my case studies. I have 5 case studies in the book. When you think about the launching of Sputnik at the beginning of the Cold War, really, it kicked off in panic in this country. We were afraid of losing our edge in technology, or if the Soviet Union can send these rockets into space, could they put weapons on them and bomb us? our politicians were very, very frightened. In fact, they began to look at space exploration as a national defense necessity, national security necessity. As Lyndon Johnson said, it's part of the arms race. And the priority is not to have the ultimate weapon. The priority is to have the ultimate position. And the ultimate position is to be able to dominate from space. And so that is the kind of attitude that fueled the GO operation, led to a historic investment of public resources in research and development. Never before in the history of the world had a government and scientists collaborating on this level. Now, prior to the World War II, for example, scientific research was conducted in small labs by priest-like scientists huddled over their work, maybe with tens of thousands of dollars. Now all of a sudden, we're working in projects that have billions of dollars, all because we were frightened of the possibility of nuclear war with the Soviet Union. We didn't go to the moon for scientific reasons. We went for reasons of national security. I don't know if you're aware of this or not. Dwight Eisenhower, when he was president and NASA was created, did not want to go to the moon. When he was presented with this thing called the Apollo project, his response was, I'll be damned if I'm going to pop my jewels to send a man to the moon. That's a complete waste of money. John F. Kennedy, a man given credit for having the vision, setting the challenge. Initially, he was not too long on the idea. When he was a senator, he was very much in agreement with President Eisenhower. In fact, in March of 1961, he told the director of NASA he was going to cancel the Apollo moon project. He thought it was a waste of money. Less than a month later, Yuri Gagarin was the first person to orbit the Earth, Soviet astronaut. By that afternoon, President Kennedy had called together all of his leaders in the administration, Werner von Braun from the research team, and said, what can we do? We've got to beat them. We've got to get ahead of them. Can we get to the moon before they do? And indeed, a month later, in May, 2 months after canceling the project, in May, he holds the second State of the Union in the same year because of the national crisis. And that's when he says, as part of our mission to protect freedom, blah, blah, blah. Let us send a man to the moon and return him safely to the Earth before the decade is over. And thus began our quest. It wasn't because we wanted to go to our pale companion in the sky to research about the origins of the planet, discover anything scientific. It was for national security purposes. And guess what? When we achieved that great goal, and I think it was a great goal, happy we achieved it for scientific reasons, mainly, public opinion polls said that people didn't think it was worth the expense. And the Russians and Soviets were no longer pursuing competing competition in space. They weren't going to go to the moon. In a very short period of time, the Apollo program lost its energy, funding dried up, and we reformulated the whole mission of NASA. It went from being, essential part of our national security apparatus to just an everyday thing. And we moved on. Far more frequent in the relationship between science and politics is the conflict dynamic. You have to remember, it's almost built into their DNA. Politicians are concerned about what? The minutia of the moment. Scientists are concerned about what? The mysteries of the universe. Both are concerned with data. For the politician, data is something to massage and manipulate for the purpose of winning an argument. For the scientist, the data is everything. It is everything. It is the foundation for every discovery, for every quote, scientific truth. So they live in different universes. They speak a different language. Their paths cross when necessity dictates. And there are issues that require policy consideration and scientific input. Their paths will cross, but they will not speak the same language and often have a difficult time communicating. Most of the time the relationship is one of conflict. Scientific discovery will uncover something that will infringe upon somebody's vested interest. So for example, the most obvious one that I talk about in the book is a case study of climate change. Climate science is pretty robust. Its findings quite reliable. As we have experienced even in North Carolina, with things like Florence or Matthew, it's real. As they're experiencing in California right now, historic wildfires. Changes in the climate are impacting the nature of these natural events, disasters. But there are many in politics who don't want to admit that, particularly those who are involved in the fossil fuel industry or who support that industry. There's billions and billions and billions of dollars that have been spent, in fact, trying to what? Deny climate change or call into question the scientific findings. But the interesting thing about science, it is what it is, regardless of your opinion. Whatever you think, the Earth does go around the sun. The Earth orbits the sun once every 365.5, whatever days it is. That's why I never say happy birthday to anybody, incidentally. I always say congratulations on another trip around the sun. I think that's better than happy birthday, because you don't want to remind old people that you're getting over. So congratulate them on the trip, and ask them to tell you about the journey and their experiences. But the point is, whatever your opinion, that happens. But ask Galileo how hard it was to get powers that be to accept that. When Galileo made that discovery, the Catholic Church did its level best to shut him the heck up. And he was, of course, unfortunately, persecuted by the church. Now you might say, but Dr. Schneider's science eventually won. Today everybody knows the Earth goes around the sun. Yeah, it eventually won, but you know, when the Catholic Church apologized to Galileo, he had already been dead for 350 years. And you don't want to have somebody apologizing to us about climate change 350 years from now. Because quite frankly, if it takes that long, there won't be any human beings here to hear it. That's the nature of that crisis. The point I make, though, is that the vested interests are going to spend a lot of money to prevent making progress, to prevent policies that will alter our energy production. There's really a war going on for survival. Those who want to do something to address the problems of climate change are worried about human survival. Those who want to stop that are worried about the survival of the oil companies. Kind of a neat war. So the conflict dynamic, another part of the conflict dynamic, I use the example of shale gas exploration. In both the case of climate change and shale gas, business interests want to deny that there are problems. In the case of shale, there are no bad side effects. It's a perfectly safe process. The water does not become damaged. You're fine. But of course, scientific discovery goes on. And we do discover there are risks associated with this process. Risks to public health. What happens, of course, is that in the case of climate change, those who oppose the interest want to deny the problem. That science is not complete. We're not certain. They're actually using the playbook that the tobacco industry used when it was first discovered that cigarettes cause cancer, just for example, or secondhand smoke was dangerous. Well, the results are inconclusive. This is incomplete work. It's biased. So we're trying to deny something that's improved. In the case of fracking, what we see is they're trying to anticipate new research. Because we began fracking long before any of the research had been done on the risks. Not a good step in my mind. But in anticipation of research that would discover those risks, the industry has been on the alert, and every time there's a new study published, set to spend millions of dollars to deny that there's a problem. It took until 2017 for the first piece of peer research to prove that fracking does result in the contamination of drinking water. It had been speculated about, hypothesized about, some tests seemed to suggest that finally, by 2017, and the first actual peer-reviewed study that demonstrated the linkage. The point I make is that resistance or not resistance, that conflict is the product of economic interests. And science doesn't care about economic interests. It tries to arrive at some understanding of reality. Politicians want to kind of avoid reality when it's inconvenient for them, and they want to win an argument. That's why many lawyers go into politics. They're good at arguing, and they know how to win. And the more political the science becomes, the less we get done. In terms of serving the public interest, whether that interest has to do with public health and safety, or it has to do with promoting newer and better forms of energy, or that has to do with ensuring that our future generations will have a safe planet and a secure life. The resistance dynamic works a little differently. There are some people who just resist the findings of science because it contradicts their beliefs. Let me ask you this: how old is the planet Earth? How old is this planet on which you live? Your home. Do you know how old your home is? Well, there are two answers I can give you. One answer says the Earth is 4.54 billion years old. The second answer says the Earth is 6 billion years old. It may not escape your notice that there's a bit of a discrepancy between those two numbers. So you might want to ask, well, gee, what's the source of these numbers? I'm sure you've heard about this. Science is able actually to measure, the age of the Earth, to measure the age of rocks, carbon dating and other things. And these techniques are pretty well proven. And the tests have enabled scientists to reach the consensus that the Earth is approximately 4.5 billion, 4.58 or 54 billion years old. Those who say it's 6,000 years old aren't coming at it from the scientific perspective. They are coming at it from a religious perspective. The young creationists, they are called, who believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. What happened there is a bishop traced the genealogies in the Bible all the way back to Adam, assuming that the Bible is a complete record, which it's not. He traced the generations, calculated the numbers, and figured the Earth was created on Sunday, October 4th, 4004 BC. A lot of people believe that. And you're free to believe what you want. But you know what? Science isn't about what you believe. It's what the data and the evidence shows us. And we know that the Earth is much older than 6,000 years. Some people think we lived with the dinosaurs. There's even museums that have exhibits of humans living with dinosaurs. The reality is, what? How long have human beings been on this planet? Out of the 4.5 billion years, how long have human beings been here? About 190,000 years, give or take. The dinosaurs died out about 60 million years before human beings showed up. We did not live together at the same time. But those who follow the young creationist philosophy say that God created man and the animals on the sixth day, so they had to live together. Well, they didn't. I hate to break it to you. I may be dating myself with this reference, but the Flintstones is not reality. Yabba dabba do. Science doesn't deal with fiction. It does the test, it finds the facts. But people will resist. The Babylonians, the ancient Babylonians thought that solar eclipses meant that the gods were disapproving of their political leaders. And even after the scientists proved, no, that's not the case, we can explain why they happened. The explanation didn't end the belief. No, this is disapproval of our leaders. That's always been the case, science and politics. Conflict resistance. Now, the fourth dynamic I talk about, and I use studies of pandemic preparedness to talk about this one, is the panic dynamic. Think of a health emergency. A flu pandemic, for example. Well, you never lived through one. You should read about the 1918 Spanish flu and the devastation that caused. And know that scientists are predicting we're overdue for another pandemic, a serious one, that could be much worse than the 1918 pandemic because the nature of our economy and our societies has changed. In any event, I know my time is getting short, I'll try to rush through this. The point is, when it comes to preparing for health emergencies, even though science can give us some projections of what to expect, I mean, we've known about Zika and Ebola for a long time, but when these two things reared their head in recent years, not only in the United States, but worldwide, we were not prepared to respond efficiently. Most experts say, in fact, what we learned dealing with Ebola and Zika was the world was not prepared for a major health emergency, and that scares the jeepers out of me. I don't know what it does to you, but it scares me. If you don't know what the jeepers are, I can explain that later. But the whole point is, we're too reactive. We're not listening to the scientists and being anticipatory and preparing. We are reactive. When the Zika crisis occurred, or the Ebola crisis occurred, we had these huge debates. Oh, what should we do? Well, and where should we get the money? And we don't want to give it to Obama because it'll be popular if we do, or, and all these political things, slowing the whole process down. And our response was incredibly slow and inadequate. So what happens during a health crisis is panic. It takes a panic to get some action. And the panic dynamic will produce some results, but usually in the delayed or reactive fashion. If you're thinking about a major health pandemic, a flu pandemic, that will be too slow to save your life. So the relationship is broken. Whether it's conflict dynamic, or resistance, or panic, even when they cooperate, it's broken, because the science isn't driving the bus. I'm not saying that they should, but the politics are dictating everything that's done. What we need is to improve that relationship if we're going to really serve the best interests of humanity. You end the book by making suggestions as to how we might improve this relationship and identify everybody who's responsible for that. That's all of you. Me, it's all of us. We are all responsible. First of all, scientists have to get out of the lab and communicate to the world. They can't just talk to each other. They've got to develop better strategies for communicating what they know to the public and to the office holder. Second of all, politicians have to learn something about science. We don't need any more Jim Inhofe in the United States Senate holding a snowball and saying this proves that global warming is a hoax. The rational response to that in the same nation of scientifically literate people is to put that man in an institution where he can get the help he needs. Our typical response is to re-elect him with a landslide vote. That's a problem. Politicians need to smarten up and become a little more scientifically literate. Our population needs to know more about science so that we don't make decisions about what we feel or think based on ideology, but that we do have a little knowledge, which means our teachers have to do a better job, which means our media has to do a better job of reporting on science. It's going to take a lot of effort from all of these sources to improve that relationship. The point I make in ending the book is that the improvement of this relationship between science and policy making, or science and politics, the improvement of this relationship may well determine not just the future of humanity, but just how good our chances are of surviving in the future. So that's the nature of the book. When science and politics collide, I think it's an absolutely great book myself. I've read it. It's very good. And it is highly recommended by choice. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it's got the highest recommendation. And believe me, it's not going to hurt my feelings. If you don't buy it, it's not going to make me rich. If you do, but I really do believe you deserve to read this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Schneider. Our second author, faculty, colleague is Dr. Jeffrey Warren, who came to UNCP in 2011 and is currently an associate professor and chair of the Department of Counseling. In 2013, Dr. Warren received the Outstanding Scholar Endowed Award for Research from the Professional Counselor, which is the flagship journal of the National Board of Certified Counselors. Dr. Warren was awarded the Adolph Dial Endowed Award for Scholarship by UCP in 2015. The North Carolina Counseling Association recognized him as the 2016 recipient of the Professional Writing and Research Award. The North Carolina School Council Association recognized Jeff as the 2017 Counselor Education of the Year, and in 2018, he received the Distinguished Alumni Award by the Nu Sigma Chi chapter of the Chi Sigma Iota International Honor Society at North Carolina State University. He has presented at state, national, and international conferences and has published numerous articles in referee counseling journals and offered chapters and other contributions for the assortment of counseling-related books. He is a member of the American Counseling Association, the American School Counselor Association, the Chi Sigma Iota International Honor Society. Dr. Warren serves on the editorial board of several journals, including Professional School Counseling, Professional Counselor, the Journal of Rational, Emotive, and Cognitive Behavior Therapy, and Dr. Warren is a national certified counselor, a national certified school counselor, and holds licensure as a professional school counselor and licensed professional counselor supervisor. So let's go ahead and talk to them.
All right. First of all, thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Dr. Canada, for that warm welcome that came straight off the internet. Thank you again for that. As I was sitting here listening to Dr. Schneider's comments about his book, a couple of themes emerged that seemed relative to my topic as well. One of those being rationality, as he alluded to, I think he even mentioned, irrationality and rationalizations. And so it seems how that is rampant in politics. I think that is also prevalent in education and also with parenting too. So one of the things that I think is important to note that I'm certainly not picking on politicians nor educators or parents, but it's just human nature to think in irrational or illogical ways from time to time. So in my book here that I wrote, this really spans about 12 or 13 years of research and practice in education here at the university, in public education, as a teacher, as a professional school counselor as well. I was working towards licensure as an LPC, and during that process, you're supervised to ensure licensure and competence and so forth. And one day, my professor or my supervisor asked me, "Well, what theoretical orientation are you operating from when you're working with this client that we were listening to on a tape recorder, if you remember those days?" And I really didn't know. I wasn't quite sure, and so I just threw out, a reality therapy, which is a common theoretical orientation. And so that led me on a path to really explore what theoretical orientation fit who I am as a person and my worldview, and that is rational emotive behavior therapy. That method of therapy and theoretical orientation really looks at the impact that our thoughts have on our emotions, and then the way that our emotions really dictate our behavior. So the idea is, if we can change the way we think, then that changes the way we emote or feel, and then in turn that impacts our behaviors. Okay? So as I was working towards licensure as an LPC, I was also working as a school counselor at a K-2 school. That was a great experience, and I loved working with the K-2 students. I did work quite a bit, as you might imagine, with teachers. And so as I was working towards licensure, really delving into the work of Albert Ellis, who's the mastermind, if you want to call him that, behind REBT, I began having encounters with teachers and administrators and with parents who seemed to be under considerable amounts of stress, anxiety, depression, emotions that really seem to impact or impede their ability to work effectively with students. Teachers also displaying those types of beliefs had challenges working with parents, working with their colleagues and administrators as well. Parents also that I came in contact with in an attempt to offer support, I too noticed that they were under considerable amounts of stress, making rationalizations about why their child is behaving in certain ways, maintaining irrational beliefs that really led them to experience stress and other, what we might call, unhealthy negative emotions. From there, I really began to explore the impact that beliefs, rational and irrational beliefs, have on teachers' ability to support students. I also began exploring Albert Bandura, and his social cognitive theory. Years ago, it was social learning theory. You may have heard of that. Social cognitive theory, he decided to change it, I think, in the mid-'80s. And so there's a wealth of research that suggests that efficacy beliefs or teacher efficacy beliefs are strongly related to student achievement. So that was kind of fascinating to me because yet again it was another belief that I could explore. So in my dissertation, I really looked at school counselor consultation and providing teachers with tools and resources that could help them uncover their irrational beliefs and develop more rational, functional beliefs that would in turn help them to emote and respond in emotionally healthy ways in the classroom. That would then in turn give them the opportunity to respond in a more appropriate behavioral manner. So a lot of the research that I've done conducted over the past 13 years is focused on teacher emotions and their relationships with irrational beliefs, rational beliefs. Some of the research that I've conducted suggests that irrational beliefs are significantly related to anger, stress, anxiety, depression. And so if you think about that, if you're in a classroom, if you're a student in a classroom and your teacher has irrational beliefs, they're likely to emote and respond behaviorally in ways that don't really, it's not really conducive to students learning and growing in developmentally appropriate ways. I've also explored efficacy beliefs and their relationship with irrational beliefs. I've taken a look at irrational beliefs and rational beliefs as they relate to grit and resiliency with a population of college-age students here on campus too. And so what I posit is that when students are in classrooms where teachers are modeling these irrational beliefs, these unhealthy negative emotions, these behaviors that aren't really conducive or almost serve as barriers to promoting student success, teachers are also modeling that for students in the K-12 world. And then they come here to college and universities, and they're also behaving in those same kind of ways that they spent their K-12 career witnessing from their teachers. So here are some of the relationships that I found is students who are grittier, that's a buzzword you've probably heard of. The more grittier students are, the more rational they are in their academic thinking. The more resilient students are, again, they think in more rational academic ways. Parents are also no exception to this too, and I reference this in my textbook. And some of the more recent research that I've conducted looking at student achievement and its relationship with parent rational beliefs also suggests that the model that I outlined in this textbook here really can help support the role that parents play in promoting student success. So that's a little bit about the origins of the book here. Again, it's been about a 12-year process, I think, writing conceptual pieces, publishing them, research articles that have been published in peer-reviewed journals. So you might consider this to be somewhat of a compilation, but then also an expansion of what I've started back in the early 2000s, 2005, 2006. The rationale for the book, again, my goal was to disseminate a model that addresses barriers to student success. So not only am I talking about those irrational beliefs, so just to define that if I could, I'm really referring to those musts, those shoulds, those demands that we place on ourselves as people. Teachers also place those same demands, those shoulds and those musts on themselves. They hold themselves to exceedingly high expectations. Now, I appreciate high expectations, but I'm talking about another level here. Also, they place those same demands on on students, on parents, on their work as a teacher in schools, and also life in general. We do that as people too, because teachers are human beings. I've extended my work to also look at biases and stereotypes from a social justice perspective, because I do think that, and there was a recent article that was published in an AERA journal that I think really supports a lot of the work that I've done here, so it's great to see that. However, the premise of the article focused on discipline and suggested that discipline really, and behavioral issues, those aren't really student issues all the time. You know, oftentimes we have an issue in the classroom, a student misbehaves and they're written up and there's punitive consequences and so forth, and they get caught up in this system of disciplinary referrals, suspensions, expulsion, and then we know that those types of student achievement related factors, they lead to retention, they lead to dropping out of school. So I suggested in my book here that we really look at this from a teacher perspective, and we might say that it's not necessarily a student problem 100% of the time, and I might even argue that more times than not, and perhaps it's a teacher problem. And so by providing school counselor consultation, or consultation in general, whether it be provided from a social worker, school psychologist, or otherwise, this model can be used to help uncover those biases, those stereotypes that really serve as barriers, again, in addition to the irrational beliefs, to helping students be successful. So this book really, I think, offers pre-service school counselors and in-service school counselors a path for delivering a data-driven consultation. We have a challenge, I think, in school counseling, and that is that there's not enough data-driven, evidence-based practices. And so here, this book seems to offer one. I'd like to say that anyway. With data-driven practices and data-driven consultation, we're able to analyze data, use practices that align with what the needs are, what the identified needs are, and then also follow up, progress monitor, and ensure that whatever the intervention or strategy or technique that's implemented is implemented, and it's implemented in a manner that meets expectation and fidelity. So, again, as I mentioned, in school counseling, we provide a lot of services. We provide individual counseling, we provide classroom guidance, we provide consultation, we collaborate with many stakeholders, students, parents, teachers, community members. A couple of recent studies, however, have suggested that school counselors practicing in the field provide an inordinate amount of consultation. Anywhere from 10 to 20 hours across a month, and I would argue that that's probably on the lower side. However, other studies have suggested that school counselors are the least prepared, out of all of those services that I mentioned, school counselors are the least prepared to actually provide consultation. So that sets up a problem for school counselors and K-12 students, because school counselors are providing a lot of consultation, however, they don't really know how to do it. And so again, this textbook here really outlines a model, an evidence-based model that I've used in schools and on multiple occasions that have yielded positive outcomes. As far as the overview of the book, it's really broken down into 4 parts. A look at education, just in general policy over the past 40 to 50 years, student services, specifically as it relates to the work that school social workers do, school psychologists, and school counselors. And I really argue that there should be more collaboration that's done across those student service personnel, and really focusing on a similar model. If we have a school social worker providing consultation, and then to a teacher, and then a school psychologist is providing consultation, and then a school counselor, and they're all different types of models, it really creates a lot of confusion for teachers and for parents as well. So I argue that, of course, this model here in my book is one that all student service personnel could use. And I encourage them to do that. Also take a look at the history of consultation. And the history of consultation is quite interesting. It really began in mental health. Mental health consultation was provided years ago, again, as a way to provide a breadth of service because of a lack of personnel to provide a service. So consultation and the history of that is discussed in part 1. Part 2 explores different models. And of course, I take the opportunity to critique those models of consultation and then also theories that have been used to provide consultation to parents and teachers. In section 3, I really outline my model of consultation, which again is a combination or integrated model of rational emotive behavior therapy along with social cognitive theory. I provide verbatim case examples with school counselors working with parents, working with teachers, working with administrators, and on committees. Helping to guide school counselors who read this book to methodically uncover irrational beliefs, promote more rational alternatives, which again lead to, in the end, more or greater student success. The model that I use is 13 steps. And so I've received some critique that 13 is just too many steps in a model. However, I wanted to be thorough, and I also wanted whoever uses this model to implement it with fidelity. And so I really thought that using up to 13 steps really provides school counselors and others with a step-by-step guide to implementing this model the way that it really needs to be implemented. So starting with building relationships. We can't just go into a school and apply this model and when we're meeting or talking with a teacher or a parent and say, you're thinking irrationally right now. That just doesn't work. The step 1 is really entering the building, the school building, and building those relationships from day 1. Understanding what the rules are, whether the rules are obvious, posted on the wall, and also what we might call hidden or meta type rules that really aren't written down anywhere. We just know that it's the lay of the land. And so we need to get in there as student service personnel and learn what those are. Building those relationships is critical, I think, to the work that we're going to do, the effective work that we're going to do with parents, teachers, and school building administrators. The model goes through step by step how to address efficacy beliefs, how to address irrational beliefs and develop more functional, rational beliefs that again lead to more healthy emoting and then more functional behaviors. There's a lot of forms and handouts that are used that are provided in the book that are really ready to be copied and used as well for those reading the book and applying the model. Step 4 moves on to really take a look at considerations for school consultation, looking at exploring how consultation fits within the professional school counseling program. Again, as I mentioned earlier, school counselors are challenged to provide comprehensive school counseling services that include consultation, counseling, coordination of events, planning, collaborating with various stakeholders. And so I argue that consultation can really be a vehicle to providing additional services at the K-12 level. I also focus on the need for school counselors to apply models of consultation or interventions in general using data to inform, to identify problems, to develop interventions that are rooted in research and in the literature, and then implementing the interventions, including consultation with fidelity, and then certainly evaluating the program and the intervention that she provided. As I thought about what I would say today, I also wanted to point out a few of the what I consider significant contributions to the book. I do believe that the text offers a detailed model of consultation, which I think there's certainly lots of models that you can choose from. But this one really seems, this book here really seems to delineate the model that I've developed, and then it also provides those verbatim transcripts too, step by step, to really help readers see how they can apply the model. I think it highlights the value of collaborating across student services as well. Again, I think oftentimes we become prisoners of our offices, and we don't get out of those silos enough. And so it's important to go across the hall and collaborate with the school social worker, collaborate with the speech and language pathologist, collaborate with the administrator, the school psychologist, because everyone has a different perspective and they have different things, thoughts, ideas to offer, and a specialized training as well. Finally, this book, I believe, provides a model of evidence-based practice again that's data-driven. It provides a means for evaluating the model that I've promoted. I think that this journey on writing this book isn't something that I anticipated. It started out with it was more like action research, I guess, years ago back in 2005, the early 2000s, when I was actually a practicing school counselor, and I realized, this is an area that needs to be further explored. Because when I walked down the first grade hall, which included about 12 different first grade teachers, half of them expressed to me in confidence, of course, that they were either seeking counseling themselves or on some type of medication for anxiety or depression. And I thought to myself, it doesn't have to be this. It doesn't have to be this way. And then through classroom observations and seeing the teachers and their interactions with their students, I felt that something needed to be done. So I really didn't anticipate that this would result in a book. Hopefully that's the least significant contribution that I've made over the past 10 years. I'd like to think that I've contributed to promoting student success. I think in an age where there is a lot of maybe heated political conversations, and we have leaders in place that are spewing hatred and negativity, I think, which certainly filters down into our society and into schools. Schools are microcosms of our society. It's important to have a school counselor or student services personnel in place that can address and advocate for equity, for equality, and for addressing some of the barriers, I think, that impede student success, especially when we look at the disproportionalities of students by race and ethnicity that are being referred for special education or suspension, or that are being retained, or those students that are not being placed in AP and IB courses simply because teachers don't believe in them or hold them to high expectations. And so, again, with the work that school counselors do and student services personnel, I think this book positions them to advocate and address those biases and stereotypes, and help them think in more rational ways that, in the end, will hopefully promote student success. So, thank you all. I think the next step is.
Dr. Ward. So yes, it's about 4:25 or so, and we're going to be mindful of time. And so, if there's 2 questions per speaker that you want to ask, let's do that now. So, any questions for Dr. Schneider or Dr. Moore? Dennis.
Dr. Schneider, just on your first case study, did you say Bernard von Braun was a scientist or a politician?
He was a dreamer. His whole life was dedicated to rocketry, rocket science. He didn't care who paid the tab. He was a member of the Nazi Party in Germany, a member of the SS. Now, he didn't do the terrible deeds, but he was an SS member, which associates him with terrible deeds. Some people think he was not somebody to be respected. Others think he's a hero for what he did to help us go to the moon. But what he was a scientist who was a dreamer and wanted to keep doing rocketry. And when he was in Germany, he was an uncritical patriot who found that the military was willing to let him do his research, so he did it. The war was over. The United States brought tons of Nazis over here to help us with our rocket program. And he was one of them. He saw the United States military as a means to his end. His whole goal in life was to send a man to the moon. Period. He saw the politics as his pathway, somebody's going to write checks, so I'm going to do that. His passion was rocketry. But he was smart enough to realize it ain't going to happen unless the politicians have a reason to do it. And so he became, not only a critical part of our nuclear research, but our leader in our rocket research, and he was one of the guys Kennedy talked to right after, that first orbital flight by the Soviet astronaut. And it was he who said to Kennedy, "I can get you to the moon before the end of the decade." That was his dream. So he was a rocket nerd, okay? And that means he was a scientist, but he understood politics.
Thank you. Dr. West?
I have a question for Dr. Warren. You used the term rationality or rational behavior quite a bit in the discussion. And one of the things in my field is that Herbert Simon indicated that people aren't really rationalizers at all, that we do something called satisficing. So we either come up with optimal behaviors in a simplified world model, or we simplify, we satisfy or accept solutions to problems in a complex world, suboptimal solutions in a complex world. So we're not rational that we do this thing called satisficing, suboptimal behaviors in a complex world or optimal behaviors in a very simplified world. How does that play a role, if at all, in your kind of concept of rational behavior in the world of counseling, which I know nothing about? Does that, do either of those concepts play a role? Do they make sense in your world of rational, active behavior?
How about if I throw this to some of the other counselor educators in the room? That's fascinating, and it's something that I would love to explore more. Just thinking right off, what you're describing to me in the world of REBT seems to speak to global evaluations and the way that we perhaps save face. And so, for example, if a teacher, I'll just use a teacher. If a teacher says, the student is behaving in an inappropriate way, and I've done all that I can do. Perhaps they're rationalizing that because if they continue to try more, then they could put the blame back on themselves, and they perhaps may say, well, if there's nothing that I can do, then what does that say about me as a teacher? And so I don't know if that exactly. I'd have to look more into what you're describing. But one of the types of irrational beliefs is evaluation of the self, evaluation of others, and evaluation of life. And so in some instances, we may negatively evaluate one of those aspects of our world based on experiences and situations that arise. Alternatively, we would want to think in a more rational way and say, it would have been nice had that student done what I'd asked, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. That makes sense.
Well, what I'll do is I'll send you the article, and you can take a look at it, see if it makes sense. And I don't know counseling.
Yeah, no, I'm always interested in looking across interprofessionally at other concepts and how they align with the world of counseling.
Okay, good. Thank you. That works.
Any additional questions for Dr. Schneider?
Dr. Schneider, whenever you're giving your talk or you're speaking, do you feel as though you might offend politicians?
Do I feel that I might offend politicians? Well, I hope so. No, I don't worry about that, The only thing I can be responsible for is the truth. So if you take a look at just take a look at science or social science, study try to explain human behavior. We say what the data shows us. And if somebody has contrary opinion, well, that's nice, but so what? I mean, the data shows us something that we have to share. For example, on a scientific issue like the Earth orbiting the Sun, there are two sides to that issue. There's no debate here. There's reality and there's cuckoo land. I mean, so I don't apologize for dealing with reality. Now, that said, if we have the same reality, we can still disagree about how to respond to it. The disagreements should be about how we deal with reality, not about reality itself. That's one of the whole points of my book. We got to get these two different worlds, at least sometimes, plugged into the same reality, so they communicate with each other, have more intelligent conversation.
One more question. Either Dr. Schneider or Dr. Moore. Doctor.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name.
Dr. Moore.
Okay. How has federal education policy affected your research?
That's a really good question. I would say that I have certainly been more intentional with trying to align my line of inquiry to state and federal policy because that is tied to funding. And nobody really wants to talk about REBT and social cognitive theory and irrational beliefs and all of that type of stuff. But from a larger perspective, what I'm really talking about is social emotional well-being, which is, I think, included in a lot of the language now in federal level education policies and IDSSA and so forth. So I think it's also tied to the problem that we have related to a lack of student service personnel in our schools. And so it's important that, one of the things that I think that school counselors have done a really poor job of over the years is, certainly we talk about what we do as school counselors and how important it is, but we don't necessarily demonstrate through data how the impact that we have. And so I think it goes back to what Dr. Schneider talked about and how critical data is and research. And that's the way that we can hopefully encourage or persuade politicians to provide funding for certainly well-needed student support services.
Thank you.
Great question.
And so if there are additional questions, by all means, during the reception, you can ask Dr. Schneider what you want. But let's give them another round of applause. And also, I'd like to thank both doctors for providing a signed copy of your book, which will be given out right now. So, my assistant, Brent Nicholson, is going to hand me a number. I'm going to call the last 4 digits, and we'll wrap up get Dr. Schneider's book away first, okay? And like Dr. Schneider says, it's not going to make them rich if you buy it, but knowledge is power, right? So, all right. 0585. Come on, Doc. All right, Doc. Y'all can clap for it. Dr. Steve Jones is in the counseling department. All right. Next book, Dr. Warren's book, 0582. 05, Dave, are you serious? Oh, I see. Oh, okay. 0582? No? Okay. 0593? If you all don't want, I'll take it. I mean,
Get this thing up.
0587? Chris? Come on, man. All right. Thank you. And again, Congratulations. On behalf of the Friends of the Library, I want to welcome and thank you all for coming out to our FOL Faculty Showcase program. As Dennis mentioned, FOL has a couple of programs that we do throughout the year. The one thing we're very proud of is our student scholarships that we give out annually. So look out for updates. I think Mr. David will be sending an email out, or someone will be sending emails out regarding when the due date is for the applications. So look out for that. Take it, David. Or you can check out the library's website in January, but definitely apply for those scholarships. Okay? Are any recipients of this library scholarships in this room? Okay, so hopefully we'll get some new recipients, all right? With FOL being a university and community-based entity, the Friends of the Library, our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and I Am Boss, which is a student organization, we are hosting a Feed Friends, pre-Friendsgiving, not Thanksgiving, program with the Oldham Home on next Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We'll be serving dinner to those residents at the Oldham Home. That's a part of giving back to the community. So if you want to help with that, just let me know. And then lastly but not least, we welcome you to become a friend of the library. So if you're interested, you can see me or anybody in the library. They can help you become a friend. I want to give a special thanks to Ms. Ann Coleman, the Assistant Dean for Research Services for the library, Ms. Gwen Locklear, who is the Administrative Executive Assistant for the library, Ms. Carlene Cummings, Special Collections, my very own Ms. Lisa Bullard, in our office, Chris Boyer for always providing tech needs, our bookstore for being, are you back there? Bookstore? There you go. So, they have books back there for sale if you're willing to buy one. And finally, to all of our FOL members and our board for making my tenure as FOL president easy, but also to tell the story for the Friends of the Library. So, again, you're welcome to join the reception and also to further converse with Dr. Moore and Dr. Schneider. Thank you.